Why, yes, I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Live from Little Rock, it's Shane Plays Radio, Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. Thanks so much for tuning in. Whether you're listening live on Saturday at 1 p.m. on 96.5 FM The Answer in the Little Rock metro area, or online at 96.5fmtheanswer.com website, or if you're listening delayed via the podcast, which goes out on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and many other fine podcast directories, or if you're listening on Krypton Radio, kryptonradio.com is SciFi for your Wi-Fi, and we rebroadcast there on Saturdays and Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Central. Regardless of how you're listening, thanks so much for allowing us to be part of your day or evening. So got a great show today. I'm super excited to have Chris Perkins from D&D back on. Got a couple of quick show notes, and then we'll jump right into talking to Chris. Before I throw those show notes out, though, I do want to welcome him to the show. Chris, welcome back to Shane Plays.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. I'm really thrilled to have you back on. There's a lot of, as always, recently, seems like there's a lot of cool stuff going on with D&D and role-playing games in general. I know you're a busy guy, and I truly appreciate you taking the time to come on.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, and before I get into the, I've got several questions for you today, but let's go ahead and get the most important one out of the way. People the world over are waiting with bated breath for the answer to this question, Chris. How the heck is Milo?
My dog Milo is doing just fine. He's kind of down because we've had a lot of rain lately, but I'll be taking him on a big walk after we're done here.
All right. Are we ever going to get the official stat block for Milo?
Oh, I don't know. I actually think I might have put a couple of his stats up on Twitter.
Have you? Okay. Well, yeah. For those that don't know, you mentioned he's your dog, but he's a chiweenie. He's probably the world's favorite chiweenie, which is a Chihuahua weenie dog mix, I guess.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right.
Very gentle soul. Definitely lawful good.
Okay. All right. Well, good. So, all right. Had to get that answered so that we can all collectively, move on, because that is big stuff. We love Milo. All right. A couple of show notes for sponsors, and then we're going to do a brief news segment, most of which involves Dungeons and Dragons, and then we'll go right into talking with Chris for the rest of the show about various cool things, including the new Volo's Guide to Monsters, and the book that's out from Wizards of the Coast D&D, and then also that D&D has been inducted into the Toy Hall of Fame. So we'll be talking about those two topics, and from what I understand, others. So make sure to stay tuned for that. You yourself, if you so choose, can talk to the one and only Chris Perkins. You can call in at 501-823-0965 if you happen to be listening to live. It's 501-823-0965, or you can tweet me at Shane Plays, and I'll make sure to pass on any questions or comments you might have to Chris. So I can tell you, I can guarantee you, having spoken with him more than once now, he's very friendly and he doesn't bite. So very nice guy. Okay. Here's some sponsor notes. The collector's edition / the comic book store is having a Thanksgiving weekend sale. And that starts today, the 19th, and runs through Saturday, the 26th. And that will give you 25% off back issues and graphic novels at the collector's edition location in North Little Rock, or the comic book store location in Little Rock. Also today only, the 19th. So if you're listening live, you can take advantage of this. If you're listening podcast or on Krypton Radio, unfortunately you will not be able to, but today only, it's local comic shop day. And there are many exclusive variant items that are available today only. And I was on the local comic book or local comic shop day website checking the stuff out, and there's some pretty cool stuff. So drop by if you happen to be listening live today. And of course they will be closed on Thanksgiving Day. Another quick shout out, Game Goblins, show sponsor Game Goblins, is having a Star Wars Destiny launch party tonight. And that's at 5 p.m. and it's there's this new Star Wars Destiny game coming out that is a card / combination dice game. It looks pretty cool, so go check that out. 5:00 tonight at Game Goblins. All right, Zach, you got that microphone. Let's listen in on the newsroom, see what's going on in there. Whoop. Love those guys working on Saturday. Man, hardworking guys. And folks, don't forget, for every $1 of Patreon support that the show gets, the news team gets a penny an hour raise. A penny an hour. Come on. These guys work hard, and gals work hard for you on Saturday to bring you the latest and the greatest in news. And you know, Chris, I've actually got a follow-up. I think the last time you were on has been almost a year to the day, and you had just gone and seen the Spectre James Bond movie.
Right, yes.
And we talked about one of the news items I had was that it was the largest on-screen explosion ever. And I finally saw the movie. It's on Amazon Prime right now. That's a darn good Bond movie. Zach's in there nodding his head. Great movie. I'll tell you, Chris, what it felt like to me was, you know how the Bond movies in the 70s and early 80s got kind of over the top and almost comic booky?
Yes.
Yeah.
Roger Moore era, particularly.
Yeah, it felt like it had elements of that, but with modern sensibilities. Because you had like the villain sort of like torturing him and all, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they sort of lightened up a little bit with this latest one. It's pretty breezy, actually.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think now Casino Royale was pretty fantastic, but out of the modern, or not the modern, but Daniel Craig, right? He's out of all the Daniel Craig movies, I think I might have liked Spectre the best. But I saw a news article, and this isn't an official news item today, but I thought I'd mention it to you. You know that Day of the Dead scene they have at the beginning, where it's the big Day of the Dead parade in Mexico City.
Fantastic opening sequence.
Yeah, fantastic opening sequence. One of the best opening sequences ever. That parade didn't actually exist on that level. They did it for the movie.
Yes.
But Mexico City is now recreating it every year because it looks so great in the movie. Did you hear about that?
I had not heard about that.
Yeah.
I did know that they basically recreated the parade because they did it off season, essentially.
Yeah, well, it was off season, and the level in the movie was off the chart. Amazing. So the Mexico City has taken costumes and props and everything from the movie, and they're getting volunteers to recreate that in real life.
Very good. Yeah.
So
I'm a huge James Bond fan.
Yeah.
Massive James Bond fan. I pay very close attention to all news related to 007.
So what do you, and again, I don't want to spend too terribly much time on this, but I think, was Spectre not Daniel Craig's last movie?
So there has been a great deal of speculation about that. It was the last one that he was contracted for, but they are actively pursuing him for another one.
Okay, because I saw a headline the other day with another possible name or whatever. I'll tell you, if that's Daniel Craig's last movie, they ended it on a great note, right? He put the gun down and left with a girl. And I liked that, not necessarily for James Bond in general, but as an ending point for that James Bond, and then he shows up and steals the car at the end from Q. Yeah. What do you think of the new younger Q? I kind of like him.
I think he's very special. I think Ben Whishaw has great chemistry with Daniel Craig. The two of them pair nicely together. Yeah. And it sort of brings Bond into a more contemporary feel. Yeah, no,
I like the new Q. I mean, I loved it when for a brief time we had, I can't believe I'm forgetting the name, Monty Python.
John Cleese?
Yeah, for a brief time we had John Cleese's Q, and I loved that. But I do like this younger guy. Okay, enough James Bond. We could do a whole show on James Bond, of course. But moving on to the news, I did want to let people know that on YouTube and on my blog at shaneplays.com, I have a review up for Volo's Guide to Monsters. And whether you read my review or go find somebody else's, I know that like Ian World and others have a collection of reviews. This, we'll talk about it more later in the show, but this is a very cool book, Chris. I think, it has to stand the test of time. And I've just read it, and it's still, I'm still like, wow, really jazzed on it. But I think this is my favorite 5th edition book to date.
Wow.
Yeah, really. I mean, above and beyond everything else has been put out. And, fifth edition has been good stuff. So I want to talk more about, it later in the show, but I think it's a really cool blend of lore for the people who want lore and stat blocks for the people who want stat blocks. It's a great blend of the two. And I think I read an article where Mike Merles was quoted saying that they're maybe looking at doing more books like this in the future. And I'm fully in favor. I think you guys did a fantastic job and knocked it out of the park.
A lot of thought went into trying to come up with something that we hadn't done before.
Right.
We didn't just want to simply do another monster manual because we could have easily gone that way, and we've done that before. It was an experiment. We weren't sure. We had a sense that a lot of people would dig the detailed lore on some of the classic monsters and also enjoy getting the stats for a bunch of other iconic D&D monsters, but we weren't sure until the book went out just how well it would be received.
From what I can see, it's been extremely well received. So, I hope that's the same feedback you're getting from what I'm seeing. I got with that. Oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and it sort of gives you a hint of the type of surprises that we have in store in the future too. I think people should just expect the unexpected when they see what's next.
All right. Well, for me, well done. I have made no secret that I think 5th edition has been a great addition, not only for the rule set, but also the quality of the books. Mm-hmm. Volo's just, continues that. Like I said, I'm deeply impressed. And I got, without realizing it, because I reserved it at my friendly local game store, I got that amazing special edition cover.
That's another experiment with this book that we're trying for the first time, the idea of multiple covers.
Yeah. Well, I was actually, and I think that's a great idea. That like Hydro 74, the artist that did this cover. Yep. Wow. But yeah, I was actually busy at work. I was working at home, and I asked my wife, I said, my book is in, would you mind running up to the game store and getting it for me? And she did. Thank you, Sheila, if you happen to be listening. And she walks back in with that. And I was like, wow. So that was a nice surprise. I'll tell you, I know that books are meant to be read, and I get that, but I'm seriously considering buying both versions so that I can use the standard version at the table with my players and having that cover for my personal library that's just for me. So
that's a really good idea.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, it looks really nice.
As an employee of Wizards of the Coast, I heartily endorse you buying the book.
I thought you might. So, and if people want that special edition, it's one run and that's it. So when it's gone, it's gone. Go to your friendly local game store. And I'm already hearing a lot of game stores are out of stock on it and they can't get more. It was a one-time run from what I understand. So
that's correct.
Yeah, it looks fantastic. Okay, we'll talk about this also more in the show later, but D&D has been inducted into the Toy Hall of Fame.
Oh my goodness, isn't that special? We are in good company.
Yeah, you really are. This is a big deal. It continues to show how, for want of a better word, D&D has gone mainstream.
Yes.
When
you take a look at the company that we're in and the other products that have been nominated in the past, these are iconic toys. I mean, they include Barbie, Big Wheel, Frisbee, Lego, Play-Doh, Rubik's Cube, Slinky, teddy bears. Hell, I mean, other inductees include the cardboard box.
Yeah. Alphabet blocks.
Yeah.
The baby doll, the ball. I mean, what they're saying is that the D&D is considered a core toy, even though it's more than a toy. It's impacted, our society on that level.
Yeah, it's a cultural phenomenon.
Right. So, and of course, we'll talk about that more in the show. And that was actually why I reached out to Greg Tito when I saw that, because I had a news item a few weeks back saying that you've been nominated. Then I mentioned that you won. And I just got so excited when you won. I reached out to Greg Tito. I said, I'd love to do a show on this if anybody wants to do it. And lo and behold, Chris Perkins stepped up to the plate. So thank you, sir. And then last but not least on the news, this is the only D&D or non-D&D related news item that I have. I wanted to mention it last week. I wasn't able to, so I got to mention it this week. Studio Ghibli's, I hope I'm saying that right. Hayao, I just know him as Miyazaki, is coming out of retirement. So that's a big deal. This is the guy that did, Princess Mononoke, Spirited Away, all these movies, and he retired. And now he's coming out of retirement to do Boro the Caterpillar. And all we know about Boro the Caterpillar at this point is that it's about a little tiny caterpillar that is small enough to squish between your fingers. That's all we know. So I just want to throw that out there. A lot of people that are very excited about this. Are you a Miyazaki person at all, Chris? Do you like his movies?
Yeah, I've seen most of his movies. I think Princess Mononoke is my favorite.
Yeah.
But that's good news.
Yeah. Well, he had retired, and then they still had and I'm probably saying this wrong. I don't mean to be, purposefully mangling things, but I just always said Miyazaki. Their studio, it's either Ghibli or Ghibli, and his son was doing stuff with it, and there were some other animators, but he had retired, and then he came back, just to do this. And of course, he's done Spirited Away, Princess Mononoke, Kiki's Delivery Service, and there was one other that's actually one of my Howl's Moving Castle. Love that one. That's probably one of my favorites. So anyway, okay, so moving on. That's the news for this week. I want to talk a little bit about Volos, kind of introduce people to what Volos is. Then we'll take a break and kind of flesh it out a little bit more. So I guess, Chris, in your words, and I wanted to congratulate you publicly. I know this is for you, it's been a few months, but this is the first time I've talked to you on air since I saw you talking about it. Congratulations on your U.S. citizenship.
Well, thank you very much. I became a U.S. citizen back in January when I decided I wanted to vote in this year's election.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. I know it can be quite a process. So,
it went by very smoothly, actually. Yeah, I think it was pretty easy because I had lived here for almost 20 years. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm congratulations. And
thank you. It was a big decision. I had to give up my Canadian citizenship to become an American citizen, but I don't regret it. Not for 1 minute. I love it here.
Yeah. It's, for all of its faults and warts and whatever, America is still a pretty darn great place. Don't even want to explore it with the current stuff going on. I don't want to go too far into that, but this is a great country. So, I do have to ask, with assuming that people in Canada even still say hoser, are you officially allowed to say hoser anymore?
No, they revoked that along with my citizenship.
They sent you a piece of paper with this like red stamp that said no hoser.
That's right. Yes.
That's too funny. All right. Well, in your own words, tell us about what Volo's Guide to Monsters is. And then, and like I said, after you introduce it, we'll take a break and then come back and talk a little bit more about how this book came about.
Yep. Well, we are now a few years into the 5th edition line, and one of the comments or a lot of the feedback we got was that DMs were looking for more monsters to add to their games. So we felt the time was right to come out with another monster manual style book. But as I said earlier, we didn't want it to be exactly the same as a typical monster manual. We wanted to surprise people and give them something, and also make sure that the book, whatever book we create, is a book that DMs are actually going to use, not just keep up on a shelf, but really, really put through the paces. And so we basically came up with this idea of a book of 3 parts. The first part of the book would delve into the lore of some of the most iconic D&D monsters, like Beholders, Mind Flayers, Goblinoids, Orcs, Yuan-Ti, Kobolds, and then basically provide, between 8 and 16 pages of content on each of these monsters to really give DMs something they can sink their teeth into and basically fill the DM's head with all kinds of adventure hooks and ways to use these monsters. And we included things like names for monsters and lairs for monsters and other things in the section to help the DM and save the DM time. The second part of the book was more of a classic monster manual where we present a bunch of monsters, most of them from earlier editions of the game, updated to 5th edition in a monster manual style presentation. And these monsters are ones that I would have included in the 5th edition monster manual had we had twice the space. But space considerations being what they were, we had to make some decisions back with the 5th edition monster manual about what to include and what not to. And a lot of the monsters that we cut from the monster manual outline ultimately ended up in this book. But we also had this fun internal process where everybody working on the book in any way, shape, or form was basically given a chance to champion a handful of monsters that they definitely would have liked to have seen appear in the book. And we were given one monster that we could just decide was in the book, no matter what anybody else in the department thought of it.
And what?
Finally,
okay, now are we talking about the lore, or are we talking about the stat blocks?
We're talking about the stat blocks.
Okay.
And so the monsters that get the deep dive into the lore, like the Beholders and the Yuan-Ti, those we settled on as a group, based on just general sense of what monsters get the most play or have the most depth to them. We made a couple choices about omitting certain monsters, like dragons, for instance, because dragons are sort of weird because each color of dragon is very distinct and different. They are not so much a family as some of the other monsters that we ultimately settled on.
Yeah, they don't get together and have layers and community and all that. Not. Yeah.
And then there were things like devils and demons, which is just, I mean, you could write an entire book on either one of those things. That was just too big of a piece to bite off.
Right.
So we made some decisions there about which monsters to feature and which ones not to. But as far as the monster manual section of Volo's Guide to Monsters, which has just a weird assortment of monsters with stat blocks, we tried to go back into as far back as 1st edition to find some of the classics and bring them forward. Mm-hmm. And then the third part of Volo's Guide to Monsters is the weird sandwich meat in the middle, which is the player races. Mm-hmm. Basically taking a handful of monsters and giving you player-friendly stats for them so that players can play Firbolgs and Tabaxi and Tritons and goblins and hobgoblins and kobolds and Kenku and other weird creatures.
Yeah, poor Jeremy Crawford. I've been seeing him on Twitter, and he's getting deluged with questions about the Tabaxi and unarmed strikes because they have the claws. So people are definitely paying attention to these new player races. So, and there's a whole group of players out there and DMs that they want as many player options as possible. So that was definitely a major score, in my opinion, to include that in the book.
Yeah, and we're generally with this edition, we're very conservative about adding new game mechanics to the system because we want to avoid situations that create imbalances or bloat. But this seemed like a good time to show off some of the weird race stuff.
Right. Well, and it's also the race section. Player races also includes notes for adapting existing races that are in the monster manual and making them playable if you so choose. So not only do you get several just straight up as if it's a race in the player's handbook, several playable races, but you also get new notes on plucking certain creatures out of the monster manual and making them playable. So
I've always been of two minds about the idea of playing monstrous races. On the one hand, the novelty can be fun, and a weird addition to a party like a Tabaxi can kind of shake things up. But on the other hand, if you go too far down that road, you end up with these sort of carnival cast parties around where everybody's kind of a freak, and suddenly you kind of lose the basic human, dwarf, elf, halfling element. I mean, for every Tabaxi you stick in the party, that means probably one gnome or halfling is getting booted out.
Right.
It's a weird juggling act, but ultimately we trust DMs to run the campaigns that they want and to allow the options that they want and to disallow things that they think are going to make their campaigns feel too weird.
Right. Well, and it will. I've got a couple of notes on that. We'll do after the break. I want to go ahead and get a break in, but we'll talk about the classic traditional races versus monster races if we have time. I also wanted to mention one of the appendices that I was extremely happy was the many NPC stat blocks that you included.
Yes.
I was very happy to see that. There's a wide range.
I guarantee you that part of the book will probably get more use than any other part of the book, just like the NPCs in the Monster Manual do.
Yeah, as a DM, I was that. As a DM, that was the section that I immediately went, ooh, I'm going to put this to use like immediately. But everything in the book is well done and useful, and we'll talk about it more, but well done. When we come back on Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, we're talking with Chris Perkins from the D&D team at Wizards of the Coast, also celebrity DM to the stars, great ambassador for D&D and role-playing in general. We'll talk to him further about Volo's Guide to Monsters. We'll talk about D&D's induction into the Toy Hall of Fame and probably some other cool stuff. And in fact, I think he mentioned a tidbit he wanted to share about Task Force Gray, if I remember correctly. When we come back on Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, a journey into things we love. Comic book lovers, visit thewildstars.com today. From the mind of author and comic book industry expert Michael Tierney, it's not just a comic book, it's a comic book novel. The Wild Stars is sci-fi and so much more. Learn the explanations behind UFOs and space gods. This isn't the Twilight Zone. This is the region of the Milky Way galaxy known as the Wild Stars. We guarantee you've never read anything like it. The complete comic book novel took 20 years to tell, with one reviewer noting, the story of the Wild Stars stretches ambitiously across space and time, from small-town murders to the destruction of planets, with every event given multiple layers of meaning. If you haven't read The Wild Stars, you're missing out. Visit thewildstars.com today.
Megawars.net. The classic online space strategy game has returned, bigger and better than ever before. Scout the universe and claim your empire. Construct, customize, and launch dozens of different starships. Battle thousands of opponents online in a team-based competition leading to the ultimate Battle of the Galaxies. Grab your slot today for the only online game where tactics and strategy still reign supreme. Visit Megawars.net and get options only available in our special pre-sales previews running now.
Megawars.net.
The die is cast.
Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Trollord Games. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions. Castles and Crusades is the original easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/Shane Plays. Hey, welcome back to Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, a journey into things we love. I am joined by D&D's very own Chris Perkins, and we are talking about many cool things, including Volo's Guide to Monsters and D&D being inducted into the Toy Hall of Fame. I need to correct a minor thing. Right before the break, I mentioned Task Force Gray. It's just Force Gray, and that is one of the two ongoing live stream D&D campaigns that Chris is running with very entertaining groups of players. So I guess since that, Chris, did you want to? You said you had an update or a tidbit you wanted to share on Force Gray.
Yes, I would very much. Thank you.
Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
So, for those who don't know, Force Gray is a group of adventurers from the Forgotten Realms campaign setting. They trace their origins back to the earliest editions of the game and D&D comics and stuff like that. And we've brought them forward now and kind of updated the organization, and we are doing these streamed games on Twitch. Now, the Dungeon Master for the Force Grey Adventures is none other than Matthew Mercer.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, my bad. But now, are you... Anyway, go ahead. I interrupted you. Finish. Sorry about that.
Right. He is the DM for the astonishing, amazing weekly Twitch Geek and Sundry show called Critical Role. And we drafted Matt to run the Force Grey games for a group of players who are based in Los Angeles and Hollywood. And they include all kinds of amazing comic personalities, including Brian Posehn, Shelby Farrow, Utkarsh Manbar, and until his character died, Chris Hardwick, and various others. But anyway, so Force Grey they had a series of adventures that ran earlier this year, and we kind of left the group hanging. There was a bit of a climax, and this coming up on December 5th is the culmination of that show, the lost episode, the lost finale, where they basically chase after some bad guys to a cloud giant's castle, and there's a reckoning. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be crazy. We're going to introduce a couple new characters to the group, and Matthew is going to show them the time of their lives.
Fun. Okay, so now Force Grey, that's Storm King's Thunder content, correct? Or is that something completely different?
The Force Grey game is tied into our big story release for this year, which was Storm King's Thunder, which is all about fighting giants in the Forgotten.
Well, that is my next. I'm still running my personal group through Out of the Abyss, but as soon as we finish Out of the Abyss, Storm King's Thunder is next on the agenda. Really looking forward to playing that. I also wanted to mention, was it on the Waffle Crew, as it were, where you're running people through Curse of Strahd, including Pro Jared and some other folks? Yeah. Is it now? Did you just had a celebrity appearance on there with Sam Witwer, right? That's correct.
Yeah. Sam is a longtime D&D player / Uber nerd, and we had been working together to schedule-wise get him on to play a very classic D&D character in the Dice Camera Action game.
Right.
For those who don't know, the Dice Camera Action game is another Twitch show. It happens every Tuesday. And I've got 4 regular players, 4 regular cast members, and then I bring in guest stars all the time to play NPC or non-player character roles in Curse of Strahd. And Sam was very gracious enough to play the Mad Mage of Mount Baratok, who is an NPC who comes to the party's aid.
Well, I know he did a fantastic job. He's a voice actor. He does a lot of voice acting that people would recognize, including a couple of characters on the Star Wars Rebels show. He was also Crashdown on the new, or not the new, but the remade Battlestar Galactica. He played Crashdown. And
he was also in the U.S. version of the Being Human TV series.
Yep. And he was
also played a role in Frank Darabont's The Mist. He's all over the place.
Yeah, he was also in Once Upon a Time. I think he has a minor recurring role.
My all-time favorite Sam Witwer role, though, is in first season of Dexter. He played a character named Neil Perry. If you haven't seen Dexter first season, you've got to check out that.
I'm aware of Dexter, but I have not seen it. But I'll check out that episode with Sam. Sam was also I got to meet and hang out via a Google Hangout where we chewed the fat and debated multiple RPG things with him and his brother Michael. Michael, of course, wrote Empire
of Imagination.
Yeah, Empire of the Imagination, the Gary Gygax biography. I've had Michael on the show. And what was most personally exciting to me when I first realized who his brother was, that he was Starkiller in the Force Unleashed games. Yeah, he was not only the voice actor, but also the motion capture and the appearance. So anyway, That's very cool that you got
if
Sam.
you haven't read Empire of Imagination, I strongly recommend it. It talks about the life of one of the D&D's co-creators, Gary Gygax, but also gives you a lot of kind of behind-the-scenes sense of how the game came together, which is very timely given that we were just inducted into the Hall of Fame, and the book Empire of Imagination just recently released in softcover.
Yeah, well, it's a fantastic book. I'll tell you what people need to do if they're serious about the history of D&D and role-playing games. I've had both these authors on my show. I've had Mike Whitwer, and I've also had John Peterson. People need to go get Empire of the Imagination, and they need to get Playing at the World. And they need to read both of those books if you're really serious about understanding where D&D and role-playing came from. Yep. And Michael's book, Empire of the Imagination, is written from it reads like a novelization, but it's a biography. Right. Yeah. And John Peterson, on the other hand, he does a deep dive from a scholarly approach. And it's just fantastic stuff. And I just want to take a moment and recognize one of the things, the only sad thing to me about the story of D&D being inducted into the Toy Hall of Fame is the fact that Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson are no longer with us. So I just want to acknowledge both of them. Now, Gary Gygax, beyond just inventing D&D along with Dave Arneson, also went along and did a lot more with TSR and expanding the industry of role-playing games. But Dave Arneson and he both, you wouldn't have D&D without both of them. So, and I just want to acknowledge probably two of the things as a geek that I will lament in life is I never got a chance to meet Gary or Dave and just shake their hands. So, and I know you probably have, and by all accounts, I got both of them were very nice people.
I was very lucky early on, many years ago. One of the first Gen Cons I went to, I was actually able to sit in a game with Gary.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That would be cool. Well, I'll tell you the article I've read that probably makes me feel like I know the Gary the best, like if I would ever got a chance to hang out with him, is I can't remember what site it appeared on, but there's an article out there that came out when he died called Destroy All Monsters. And it's these two reporters, tell the story of D&D and then go hang out with him, and he runs them through a game. And, if people can find that, I'll try to remember to put that in. It's called Destroy All Monsters. Fantastic article. I want to give a shout out, Chris. We've had Georgina, which is at GC Hewitson on Twitter, has sent you some notes here while we've been talking. First one sent was, thanks for talking about Bond. Now I'm going through my stuff, finding all my old James Bond toys. And they took a picture, and you're tagged on this. You'll see it on Twitter when you get a chance. And it's got the special edition of Volo's Guide to Monsters. And in front of it, there's 3 Bond cars and a 007 Bond pin, which is very cool. And then they sent another thing saying, yes, I've already had words with my DM about Tabaxi. And then they sent another picture said D&D Worlds Everywhere will soon like, and it's just nothing but cats. So I think they're implying that the Tabaxi is going to be a very popular playable race. Georgina, thanks for tweeting. I really appreciate it. And if anybody else out there wants to tweet, it's at Shane Plays, ShanePlays. And you can also call it 501-823-0965 and talk to Chris yourself if you would like. Okay, so Chris, I wanted to on Volos mention a couple of things briefly, and then I do want to talk about the Hall of Fame. Volos, just if people are just now tuning in or whatever, it's a new book from D&D. It's a fantastic book. They kind of went out of the comfort zone and succeeded in bringing us something new that is very cool. It has lore on. It's people are like, was it a source book or a monster manual? It's both. It's both and not either or. You get lore of a source book on many classic D&D monsters, including how they live together in their communities and their layers and that sort of thing. Then you get 100 new stat blocks that you can just drop. Like you could take these and just put them right into your monster manual. and you get all these new, and some of them are kind of updates or additions to classical monsters, and then some of it is this very cool, not eccentric, exotic. Almost parts of it to me reminded me of the original Fiend Folio, Chris. The first time you crack open that Fiend Folio back in the 80s, and you're like, wow, these are really cool. What is this? There was a lot of that. Then you get a whole section on several new playable races, including lizard folk and tabaxi. The tabaxi seem to be quite popular. They're cat people. And then you get a few new beasts. And I tweeted this, I think, out to Mike Merles. Chris, I got to ask you, and I love the fact that this happens, but in what context, in what meeting does somebody say, the beast we really need is a swarm of rot grubs? I mean, what context does that remark even come up?
I wasn't in the meeting when that was decided to put that in the book. I later figured out, or I think I figured out, that the reason why the swarm of rock grubs is there is because another monster actually uses them as a weapon. Ah,
okay. Yeah, I love the fact that the geek world allows discussions like, I see this incredibly corporate meeting room and somebody's like, we really need the swarm of rot grubs.
Somebody thought it was important for the kobold inventor to hurl swarms of rot grubs.
Swarms of rot grubs. Well, and this is why D&D is such an amazing thing, because we can have conversations like that make sense, Chris. So, yeah. All right. So, I wanted to mention real briefly before the break, you were talking about, playing like the more monster races you have, the less chance of the more traditional races. I think we talked about this before in a previous show. For me personally, because I'm a child of the 80s, I was born in the 70s. High school and all that in the 80s. I played my D&D and all that for the first time in the 80s. To me, D&D is the classic, right? Dwarf, elf, halfling, whatever. But a lot of my players that I have now, they love the tiefling, they love the dragonborn, and even though it's kind of a weird fit for me personally, I try not to let that interfere with what the players want to do. If they want to play dragonborns and if they want to play tieflings and all that, more power to them. However, one thing I will do as a DM, if they want to have nothing but like a party full of exotic races, they're not going to walk in to the small town tavern and just walk up to the bar without people kind of what there's going to be some reactions, right?
Right. Yeah.
I say, look, you can do anything you want, but if you walk in as a fire belching tiefling right next to a drow, right next to a tabaxi, there's just such a thing as NPCs reacting to something they're not used to. So, and so, but I never do it to their detriment. We have fun role playing with it. So,
right. And everything hinges really on how the DM builds the world and the amount of attention is paid to such things. If you're running a campaign at the edge of a jungle, then tabaxi might become a mainstay, and they might be as common a sight as elves, say. Yeah. It's all contextual.
Right. Well, I guess, if you're, it is contextual. If you're running a Forgotten Realms Sword Coast adventure and your lizard man walks into a bar in a smaller hamlet, there may be a little bit of an eye blinking, but, more cosmopolitan or again, in the jungle, the lizard folk might be, more commonplace. All right. Moving on from that.
Wearing lizard boots.
Yeah. All right. So, the Hall of Fame, being inducted into the Hall of Fame, National Toy Hall of Fame, did that surprise Wizards of the Coast / Hasbro?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so. Nobody I talked to was surprised. We've sort of had the sense for a long time that D&D has kind of earned its cultural cred simply by the attention it's being given in Hollywood and elsewhere. Over 90% of people on the street that we survey have at least heard of the game, if not played it.
Right.
So it's really a cultural phenomenon. I feel like it was only a matter of time. And I guess they must have run out of, other things.
Right. Well, no, I mean, I think it's not. I mean, I think it's a big deal, for the hobby.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's really the only thing of its kind in the Hall of Fame. This sort of penetrating storytelling thing. There's easy bake ovens. There's
right.
Slinkies. There's balls. There's all these other things. Doll houses. And then there's D&D, which is this elaborate, complex, amazingly open-ended storytelling game. It'll be interesting to see what follows it.
It will. And one thing I want to acknowledge, D&D on a certain level is a game, quote-unquote, toy, but it's also more than that. There are some people who can see it just as, oh, yeah, I played D&D a couple of times when I was in high school, and it was fun, and they almost treat it like they played Monopoly that night. It was fun. And on that regard, it's more like a quote-unquote toy. But it's also this incredible imagination engine that is also an incredibly social thing that, I mean, there's, so many people now that generation has gotten older when D&D first came out. The movies that are being made.
You don't hear quite as many stories about people becoming friends after playing Rubik's Cube.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
It is a way to create lifetime friendships, and as you say, it's an imagination machine insofar as the game builds into its DNA the urgency for DMs and players to create their own original content.
Yeah, there's nothing quite like it. So when it's hard to describe unless you've done it. And I love computer role-playing games. Don't get me wrong. I love them. But people will come up and say, why do I want to sit down and do that if I can just load up, this single-player computer role-playing game, And I'm like, it's a whole different thing. It's hard to explain unless you sit down and do it. But it's just a whole different thing. So, one being it's an unlimited horizon. You can do whatever, your imagination allows. Hey, Chris, real quick, I'm going to read an ad for a sponsor, and then we'll wrap up the show here in a few minutes. Some Goblins are your friends. Game Goblins is Central Arkansas's premier retailer of Magic the Gathering, Warhammer 40K, board games, card games, RPGs, miniatures, and hobby accessories. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at gamegoblins.com. Conveniently located at 1121 South Bowman, right on the corner of Bowman and Canis in West Little Rock, and staffed by friendly employees, Game Goblins has expanded their store size, and there's plenty of room for exciting inventory and tables for play space. You'll like that space because Game Goblins has gaming events every day of the week. For all of your gaming needs, I heartily recommend Game Goblins. Make sure to check out their customer loyalty program that rewards you based on your actual purchases. Game Goblins earns your business and keeps it. First-time customers mention Shane Plays and receive $10 off your purchase of $50 or more. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at gamegoblins.com. Tell them Shane Plays sent you.
Comic book lovers, visit thewildstars.com today. From the mind of author and comic book industry expert Michael Tierney, it's not just a comic book, it's a comic book novel. The Wild Stars is sci-fi and so much more. Learn the explanations behind UFOs and space gods. This isn't the Twilight Zone. This is the region of the Milky Way galaxy known as the Wild Stars. We guarantee you've never read anything like it. The complete comic book novel took 20 years to tell, with one reviewer noting, the story of the Wild Stars stretches ambitiously across space and time, from small-town murders to the destruction of planets, with every event given multiple layers of meaning. If you haven't read The Wild Stars, you're missing out. Visit thewildstars.com today.
Megawars.net.
The classic online space strategy game has returned, bigger and better than ever before. Scout the universe and claim your empire. Construct, customize, and launch dozens of different starships. Battle thousands of opponents online in a team-based competition leading to the ultimate Battle of the Galaxy. Grab your slot today for the only online game where tactics and strategy still reign supreme. Visit megawars.net and get options only available in our special pre-sales previews running now.
Megawars.net.
The die is cast.
Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie, and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Trollord Games. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions. Castles and Crusades is the original, easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/Shane Plays. Hey, welcome back to Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love as we continue talking with the one and only Chris Perkins of D&D.
Okay, so Chris, back to final thing on the Hall of Fame. I know that a representative of Wizards of the Coast went to the ceremony and received the award, or I guess an award would be the right word for it. Do you know if Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro planning on doing anything internally or externally to observe this?
Oh, I'm not sure. I've been under a rock on a deadline for the past couple of weeks. Yeah, but we sent our director Nathan Stewart out to New York to get the reward and the award, I should say.
Yeah,
and I'm sure there's something in the works.
Okay, well, it's big. To you and I both, we're pretty much the same generation. To see the perception of D&D in the 80s, to being in the Toy Hall of Fame, wow, that's fantastic. So, and I really do wish that Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson were here to see this. Now D&D,
they're watching from one of the outer planes. I know it.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, okay, we've just got about 3 or 4 minutes left. Radio time always goes so quick. Wanted to ask, real quick, you had Acquisitions Incorporated made a big step at the last PAX, and y'all had a Fathom event where it was simulcast live to theaters all over the country.
Yes.
I just have to ask, did that feel any different? Were you a little bit more nervous, or did you just, hey, I'm going to go out there and do what I normally do, or how did that feel?
It didn't make me any more nervous than I am anyway.
Okay.
I'm usually a basket case the week or two before the show because I'm I'm an introvert. I'm not an extrovert. Being up on stage in front of thousands of people just terrifies me to no end. But that being said, I think people really appreciated being able to go to the theaters and watch the event. It felt bigger in their mind than watching it at home on their.
It was a milestone.
It was a milestone, and I hope we get to do more of that kind of thing where we can be a little bold and take D&D into mainstream.
Yeah.
It was a fun event, and I'll be happy to do it again.
Well, have you gotten, and that was my other question, have y'all gotten any feedback on, what do people feel it was successful enough to make another run at it, or do y'all even have any information like that?
I don't, but that's not something I usually pay attention to.
Okay.
I'm just the talent.
Okay. Well, hopefully there'll be more. A lot of people felt really good that happened. So,
nobody has said, "Oh, we're not doing that again."
Okay. Well, I thought it was cool, and that mask. Wow, that mask you were wearing was out of control.
Oh, the costume, the gold dragon samurai-esque costume. Yeah, that was well done. Let me tell you.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
And the guy that does the miniatures and those table, I would even call it the guy that builds the sets to play the miniatures on, just out of control, amazing. Probably got time for one more question here. Is there anything you can comment on about the upcoming D&D movie at this point?
I cannot, other than Warner Brothers is working on it, and they're keeping us in the loop. And when it happens, it happens.
All right. Can you at least share what your role is behind the scenes?
My role is to serve as a creative consultant.
Okay.
To be there to help Warner Brothers, both the director and producers, make sure that they're creating something that feels true to the game, the spirit of the game, the essence of the game, and is going to please D&D fans.
Wow. Okay. About to wrap up here. I'm going to share something with you that a guest last week, Douglas H. Cole, was on last week. I don't know if you know this or not. According to his research, out of all RPG products sales, period, D&D counts for $8.50 to $9 out of every $10 spent. That is monstrous. So you guys are doing a fantastic job with D&D. Keep up the good work. Chris, thanks again for being on. It's always a real pleasure talking to you. And I wish you nothing but success in the future. Scratch Milo behind the ears for me. And I'm gonna end with a quote from Winston Churchill. Democracy is the worst form of government except all those other forms that have been tried from time to time. People ponder that right now as we work together as a country. Chris, thanks so much for being on.
Thanks, and if you get a chance, check out Force Grey, the Lost Episode on December 5th on Twitch.
All right, thanks, Chris.
One medium dry vodka martini, mixed like you said, sir, and not stirred.
Thank you.
Anything else, sir?
No, that's all.
Dry martini, lemon peel, shaken, not stirred.
Vodka?
Of course.
Can I do something for you, Mr. Bond?
Just a drink. A martini, shaken, not stirred.
Should I have said vodka martini sent up? Shaken, not stirred. Of course.
The lady'll have a Bacardi on the rocks.
For the gentleman, vodka martini, shaken, not stirred.
Vodka martini, shaken, not stirred.
Vodka martini, shaken, not stirred. Vodka martini, shaken, not stirred. Vodka martini, plenty of ice, if you can spare it.
Dry martini.
Oui, monsieur.
Wait. 3 measures of Gordon's, 1 of vodka, half a measure of quinoa lily. Shake it over ice and then add a thin slice of lemon peel. Vodka martini.
Shaken and stirred.
Do I look like I give a damn?
Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.